Gary Pica. What an honor to talk to Gary. I've had the great pleasure of knowing him for 10, 15 years. Uh, Managed service provider, excellent, excellent, expert, excuse me. You know, had sold two of his managed service provider businesses, knows how to run businesses. He turned around and made a training company that helps entrepreneurs set goals and really, really define what success looks like. Many of the things we talk about are not just in the tech industry, but can be moved over to any small to medium sized business. But just great insight from Gary on how he defines success and what wait till you hear 90% of what success is. I'll give you just a little teaser. One of them is self-discipline, and there's two others elements that you're really going to be surprised and enjoy. But a lot of great anecdotes. The way he arrived to where he is now, he's a great speaker on the circuit. He knows what he's talking about. Everybody, certainly in our industry, knows Gary Pica, knows there's something that he has called Picanomics, which is a way of measuring certain measurables and key performance indicators with a managed service provider. But just an MSP legend, Gary Pica. Always enjoyed talking with him. And the two big things whenever we see each other, I happen just to see him in the last couple of days. We always ask how the family is, and then the next question is, are you playing guitar? Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission: how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Great. It's great to see you, Gary Pica. It's wonderful, wonderful to see you. Is it a good time to be a managed service provider, be a small to medium-sized business in the tech industry?
I'd say right now it's the best time in history to be an MSP
Wow.
for about 25% of them.
Explain.
Okay, so many things have changed, Joe, so quickly, right? We have digital transformation. We have all the security. We have more tools. We have a pandemic, work from home. Like, just think about we can go on and on.
Uh,
Changing economy. So,
Security.
if you are a professional business person that can deal with all this, right, and make good decisions, those people are selling more recurring revenue at a higher price, growing faster, and building more value in their business than by a long shot the 25 years I've been here.
Wow.
But if not, you see, you can't raise your prices enough, and your costs are going up. Your people cost more. You got to add tools, and you're getting squeezed. The bottom 25% of MSPs are at or below break even.
Right.
So it's we've always seen it, Joe. You and I have been in this industry a long time, but that bifurcation of the bottom kind of the market and top. When I say bottom, I don't want to say that in a derogatory way. They're
Right.
just as nice people who
Yes.
care about their customers and employees. It's just harder for them to grow and make money now.
And why is it so, I want to say easy, but less difficult for that top 25 that you say that are thriving now versus the bottom 25 that are not?
Well, listen, it's having command of the business, right? I run peer groups. There's other peer groups that you've been involved in
Yes.
this industry, of really being a professional business person so that you can make better decisions, right? Understand your go to market, understand your cost, profit drivers. And when your first job is to run a business and the second job is technology and whatever that business is,
Mm.
that's that advantage. And then the big one that I want to talk to you about today is you can do anything in life. You only have to do two things. You have to
Mm.
know what to do, and then you have to do it. And that second one, execution, Joe, self discipline, it is the hardest thing. When I started coaching people and building peer groups, I thought my job was to share what I knew about running a high performance MSP. And it turns out that's not the case. It
Mm.
is understanding where people are, their self-image, their self-limiting beliefs, and helping them. And within their peer groups, that's really what they do. They help each other break through their stuff. And most of what holds them back, Joe, it happened when they were kids, like long before they ever met me.
Hmm. Hmm. Very interesting take. I know, like you said, I've been in peer groups for a long time, and there was a lot of that. There was a lot of, where do you want to be? I remember the great phrase that I've taken from you is, what does success look like? Love it. I
Yeah.
ask it in every shape and in every walk and everything that I do, and when I talk to people as well.
Yeah. And look, I had a guy here who was helping me fix something in my backyard today, right? And he has a small business. So I got talking to him and I said, "How's your business going?" I said, "Based on trying to get you here, I feel like you're unorganized."
Hmm.
And he's like, "Yeah, a little bit." I'm like, "Well, when you're unorganized, you're also not as profitable as you could be."
Right.
And so he's 33 years old. "Hey, where do you want to be when you're 55 or 60 years old? Can we back that to what your business has to do? Now, how much money do you need to make? How can you make that money with the least amount of employees and customers and whatnot?" Like we started putting it together, and he was
Hmm.
like, "Wow, I never thought of it that way." And Joe, most people don't think of it that way. I,
Right.
I asked people. I just was speaking right at an event, and
I
I
was
asked
there.
people how many people here are business owners. Everyone, how many of you regularly use a retirement calculator? And almost no hands went up, Joe.
Mm.
So
Mm.
if you don't have a destination, it's super hard to get there.
Yeah, exactly right. And let's talk about your great. So you started in the early '90s. You quit your job, and that was it. That started it all.
Yeah, I had a sales job in national accounts for ADP, making good money. It was at that time. It was the early '90s, so it was when ERP systems were just coming out.
Mm.
And back then, top salespeople at Oracle or SAP were making $400,000 or $500,000 a year. Now that's a lot of money today, but
Yeah.
back then it was a lot of money. And that was my next step. People who I competed with and beat in sales were going there, but they traveled 80% of the time, Joe, and I had young
Mm.
kids.
Mm.
So I instead gave everything up and I bought into a small, what that time was a reseller, and had never been an entrepreneur and had to learn some tough lessons, along the way.
Yeah, you absolutely did. And of course, you're from the Philadelphia area.
Yeah.
Strong roots there. And, I have a lot of friends there, and they all say, of course, you have two choices when you're from Philadelphia. You can go to Penn State or the State Penn. And of course, you went to the former. Yeah.
I went to Penn State. I have luckily so far I've avoided the state. I've avoided the state pen. But Joe, I think you have these turning points in your life, and for me, especially early on when the business was struggling, like
Yeah.
a couple times when we were wondering how to make payroll. What drove me past that wasn't thinking about being a multimillionaire or the success. What drove me was I knew that if I failed, I might never get another chance to be an entrepreneur and I'd have to go back to that sales job
Mm.
and probably do it the rest of my life. And I would have made a good living, but I wouldn't have found those special things inside of me, my special talents. And that's really what got me through was not wanting to give it up. Once we got past the tough spot, then I could look ahead and I can start setting goals. But after I sold that company, I was in my early 40s when I sold the first company, MSP, to Mindshift, and I was in the same place again. Like I became, I made millions of dollars, But at my age, it was not enough money to retire on.
Right.
I had kids to send to college, and I could live for 50 more years. So it would almost was more stress, not less.
Interesting.
And I stayed there for a while, and it was easy. And finally, it was my wife who said, like, "Look, this is not for you, man. You need to go and just go and give it a try. You have these ideas. If it doesn't work out, you can always get a job that you hate." And literally started True Methods with, no customers, no product, no employees, just an idea and some self discipline.
Lots of discipline. I want to get into that, but so you got all the lessons that you've learned that you sold two MSPs, like you said, and then you turn into this company, this training company, this consulting company that teaches MSPs how to do the same thing. So many times we see that where you mentioned before, they kind of take the money and disappear and float away or do something else. But you decide to actually turn it around and to help other MSPs. It's remarkable.
Well, listen, for me, money has to be a result, right?
Hmm.
A result of something. And I could tell you the best part about my career, right? And it's good. I've sold some companies, including True Methods. I've made some money. I have a few nice things. But there's two most important things to me, Joe. One is I got a chance to have a company where all of us came to work every day. I worked on the business plan. We had to execute it. But between quarters, I never thought about money. I just thought about how do we help people? How do we
Wow.
change lives? And having my whole team feel the same way, that every call they made with an MSP was so important, because it could be the one thing that changes it for them, where the light bulb goes on. So having to have a decade of my career feeling that juice every day, and the only big thing that comes out of it is I could give up most everything I have right now except for one thing, which is choices, Joe.
Hmm.
Like, I have choices with who I have to work with. I have choices with my time. And that's the most valuable thing. Everything other than having choices, boy, it's just gravy.
Hmm. Now that's really envious. And you know, you're one of the original podcasters, Gary, because I remember you would record lessons with Bob, and I would sit there and listen to them like on MP3s in my car. This is 10, 15 years ago because
Yep.
I'm a student at True Methods. And it was great. I mean, so this forum for you is quite natural.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love being up on the microphone. I love talking to interesting people like you, and and when people come up to me and they say, "Wow, I heard this, and I remember when you said that, and because
Yeah.
of this, I did that." It's the best feeling in the world.
It really is. And is there a far departure, do you feel, from a managed service provider in SMB and just a small business owner, perhaps not in tech? Do you think they have similar challenges, but is there a lot to relate to?
Listen, most of what, like, people view me as, the MSP expert, right?
Right.
And I do know a lot about the business and the math and the science of it, but most of what we do to make these entrepreneurs better, it's the same stuff I could do in any industry.
Mm,
You know what I mean? It's about leadership. It's about understanding your numbers. It's about putting a plan together. It's about execution and discipline. It's about culture. Those things are the same, Joe, in
yeah.
every industry. I think some other industries might be a little easier to make money. You might agree
Mm,
with that.
mm,
Listen,
certainly.
I built a software product, right? Let
Yes,
me tell
SaaS.
you, the
Yeah.
software SaaS business was a lot easier than the MSP business.
Yes. Yeah, certainly. I have a SaaS product as well, as software as a service.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the margins are a lot more attractive there, and it's less intense, and lots of differences there. But Picanomics was always one of your themes. The managed service provider economics was coined by you, called Picanomics, and there were certain formulas that really worked: endpoint service versus technicians, and that's your term, Gary. I don't know. It'll eventually enter the dictionary.
Yes. Yeah. So let me explain the simplest way, and the simplicity of it is why it's helped so many people at Picanomics. But you can apply it to any business.
Mm,
So the business that we're in, Joe, it's primarily there's really two costs. About 70% of your COGS is people, right? And about 25 to 30% is tools. That's the
mhm.
two main costs that we
Interesting.
have in our cost of goods sold. So what Piconomics does is says, hey, when you're in a business like that, you have to decide what you're delivering to customers, put everybody into a role, then make a relationship between the role and top line revenue. That's macro economics.
Hmm.
Then between each of those roles and whatever your unit of measure is in your business, in this case for us, it's a seat. That's micro economics. Then we can see the drivers that allow each person to have more, to touch more revenue or lower what their cost per seat is. And you start to see these common drivers. And if you focus on those, your business does better and your
Right.
service is better. So it was really taking a complex business and trying to simplify it, right? First for myself in my business, and then for all of our, True Methods customers. But, I watch all those shows. I watch The Profit. I watch Restaurant Impossible. I watch Bar Rescue. And always comes down to the same thing, man.
Mm, mm. And did you arrive at this conclusion with these economics, these Piconomics at your first MSP?
Yeah, let me tell you, I'm glad I made some money with it because getting there was like walking across broken glass.
Really?
I only got there by making every mistake. So one of our key things we have people track, as you know, is your average MRR. Like, what's your average customer spend? That was not original. I started figuring out the pricing things on seat price first, and then I went out and sold a bunch of customers and I wasn't making the money I was supposed to make. Then
Mm,
I figured out, wait a minute, some of these costs are based on how many, on how many customers we have, not just how many seats we have. And so I had to add that one. And then that made a big difference. And so it took me years and years of my life of realizing that sometimes logic doesn't apply till finally it's almost like one of those pictures you stare at and all of a sudden it appears. And then literally one day I'm like, oh my God, I got it. And after that day, Joe, it was just execution, man. We
really?
were over $8 million, 33% to the bottom line, and nobody who couldn't see it could catch us.
Hmm. And that was realized in the first MSP.
That was in oh, yeah, the second one was much easier, dude. I already knew
Right.
what to do.
Right.
The
Right.
challenge there was I wasn't the person doing it. Having to get somebody else to do it was the challenge. Who had
Mm,
their own, like everyone else, man, had their own self-limiting beliefs. And Joe, what's amazing to me when
mm,
when you're trying to help people is, and they don't mean to do it, but everyone's so protective of what they think, even if what they think and what they've done has made them no money.
right.
Do you know what I mean? And they see someone else who's doing it successfully, but they almost feel like if they give up with of their point of view, that they're admitting that they're wrong, or I
Wow.
don't know. You've had people in your peer group
Certainly.
like that, right?
Certainly.
They're in that peer group. Everyone's starting to do better, and they're lagging behind, and they're hanging on for whatever reason to whatever they believe.
Yeah, and you have to have a stern talk with them. Why are you spending $15,000 a month with this marketing, firm, and you're not increasing sales at all? Why are you, some of these things that are so blatant from the outside, and somebody doesn't see from the inside because they're used to it and they like going to those meetings and they like doing those kinds of things. It's not so obvious. I mean, that's why the peer groups completely changed my, perspective. Nobody understood my problems until I met like similar people.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was it was
You
huge.
know, and I'll tell you, like an extension of that is there's a book I love called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And basically, what he talks about there, his theory is that all of us in life, we only have one problem to solve, and it's the upper limit problem.
Hmm.
That based on everything that has happened to us, who we are, and everything we've experienced up until this point, we all have some level of success, money, love, friendship that we think we deserve. And when we hit that limit, consciously or many times subconsciously, we find a way to sabotage it. Joe, how many people do you know, like every time they get into a relationship, right when it starts to get to a certain point, somehow it blows up, right?
Mm.
How many business owners do you know that work really hard and they are like right on the edge of being able to get over the hump? And I call it the banana peel issue. They slip on a banana peel.
Hmm.
They lose their best tech. They lose their biggest customer. They have an illness. They go through a divorce. And the first time it happens, you say, wow, that's tough luck. But I've known them now for a decade. And every time they get to that point, they slip on a banana peel.
Mm.
They have an upper limit problem.
Hmm. Upper limit problem. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
So until you learn the process of changing your self image and your expectations, you'll get stuck.
You'll get stuck. And did you ever fall into that trap?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I didn't always realize it at the time. Like now that I have that knowledge, I can look back and I'm better at seeing it real time.
Right.
But I can look back in my career and times at times and in my business career where I had hit those limits. Luckily for me, I've always been someone who I read a lot. I read a lot of books on success. I have one overarching theory that I teach and believe in my life, which is success in anything is 90% attitude, self-image, and self-discipline, and 10% knowledge.
Hmm.
So having all that positive thing in my life, it helped me push through. But if I would have had the perspective of understanding that it was really me and what I believed, I probably could have done it faster, Joe.
Really? Do you wish you had?
I don't know. To be honest with you, I love the climb.
Right. The
I look
fight.
back and when things were hardest, and I feel like I have a good relationship with those things, and I wasn't maybe I wasn't ready. You know, it's easy to say now with all my knowledge and experience that I can see it, Joe, but maybe I wasn't ready then. And I don't
Mm.
know. I don't spend a lot of time looking back, dude.
I don't either actually, because that may change with where I am now, and I like where I am now, but there's always that saying of you must be more fearful of the wolf climbing the hill than the wolf on top of the hill.
Yep.
Very much more fearful of that because she mostly is getting hungry, and the other one perhaps is a little complacent, and um, I see that happen a lot. And what do you do? So going back to the upper limit, when you had business owners in those peer groups that just kind of fell into a lifestyle routine, right? We all know these type that really don't want to grow. They like where they are. They make it a comfortable salary. They're able to take vacations. They're not working too hard. I mean, is that just if that's what they want, that's acceptable? Do you try to move them along?
Listen, my job is not to tell everybody that they have to build the biggest business. If that's where
Right.
they are and they're happy, with one thing I always ask them, that's great, man. Let's just say this is the business you have, no more or no less. If that's the case, will you get to your long term financial goals?
Hmm.
If the answer is yes, I support you. If
Right.
the answer is no, come on, man. You got to do something. And it's not just for me, for the person. What I tell people is every MSP owner, every business owner that I know, if I ask them this question, do you have people in your business that you really care about? They've been with you and they're loyal and you care about their financial future. 100% of them say yes, Joe.
Right.
And what I say to them is, well, if you can't achieve financial independence, you're not going to help them have financial security. You can't give somebody something you don't have.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And no one's going to get there at a 10% net profit in this business.
That's right.
So, and that's really what it's about. To me,
Hmm.
we we're better being accountable to other people than ourselves. We don't
Yeah.
want to let other people down, but we'll let ourselves down. We're better with goals that impact other people's lives more than the ones that impact our lives. That's why understanding how to build a team, being in a peer group, putting these things in place where you get up every day with a level of satisfaction with customers and teammates and peer members that all depend on each other. Like that's what drives you. Not like I don't get up in the morning and open my browser and look at my bank account.
Right.
And by the way, money comes in, money goes out. We're all taking the same amount with us.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And those for those MSPs or even small business owners that that want to grow and they're doing everything they can. And I remember you saying another great quote you had, Gary, was like, "Are you the CEO? Are you still the lowest paid person in the company?" Happens all too often.
All too often. And what I tell people, look, the paycheck you get to do your job, you're just an employee. The profit ability of your business, the growth in the enterprise value of it, that's that's what you return to shareholders. And you know, I see business owners, they spend so much time looking over maybe their investments in their portfolio, but their biggest investment is their business. And they're
Right.
not measuring that in that way. And it makes no sense if you think about it that way, Joe. And, when you have a business, if you can grow it, you can invest in it. As it grows and increases in value, one, you're growing that value tax free. You don't pay tax on it, right?
Right.
That asset is appreciating. Then when you sell it, you pay capital gains. Day to day, we're paying ordinary income. And I can
Hmm.
tell you my net worth, almost all of it, Joe, came through different things I did with tax deferred things, capital gains, very little of it through the ordinary income. When you're paying 39%, federal plus
Right.
estate tax
Right.
plus, it's really a lot of headwinds, right? To achieve it, no matter whether you're a business owner or not, to achieve your financial goals, you have to understand tax implications and always think in after tax dollars. One other thing is, one big thing that changed in my life is, and again, I read some books, I was probably 25 years old. I stopped setting income goals and I
Hmm.
started setting net worth goals. And when I did that, it made me make decisions differently about how I valued my time, what I did. I had to understand tax implications because they're all the levers. And so over time, that really helped me be a better salesperson at first and then a better business person because I was always looking to build my net worth, not just make an extra 50 or 100 grand a year that the government was going to take half of.
That's right. Yeah, let's expand on that, Gary. That's revolutionary right there. So often people look at their salary, but it's really about your net worth. It's what you actually have and what you're actually worth after taxes. If investments, you all kind of cash in. That's remarkable. How did you arrive to that?
Again, just by trying to find people that were successful
Mm,
and wanting to be like them and seeing how they thought about money and how they thought about net worth. Joe, we both know people in this industry that I call high income, low net worth individuals.
huh.
They have the fanciest car and the fanciest boat. And my father-in-law was a business person, and he told me something that always stuck with me. He said, Gary, prestige is money in the bank,
Mm,
because that's where our choices come from. That's where we can have choices of what to do with our time or not have to deal with a company or a business or a person that you don't want to be able to be there, for our family. Like it all comes from that. It doesn't come from a big house or a fancy car and a plane or anything. If you can afford those things, I'm a fan of them.
right.
I'd like to have them all. And I have a few of those things, but only after I felt like I'm living within my means and based on my net worth, I'm making prudent decisions.
Yeah. Well said. Have you always 90% you said is self-discipline and kind of actualization. Is that correct?
Attitude, self image, and self discipline.
Incredible. How did you arrive to that?
Okay. So I'm going to date myself a little bit.
You're not much
But when
older
I
than me.
was when I was a young salesperson, I listened to Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy, and one of my favorites was Tom Hopkins.
Mhm.
And Tom had a book that was less about sales, more about success, a little tiny book called The Official Guide to Success. Okay. And in that book, that's where I learned the 90-10 rule and the golden dozen. I must always do the most productive thing possible at any given moment. I learned about self instruction cards, how to write a set of cards I've had with me for 25 years that speak to the person that I'm trying to become and the qualities in the first person. I picked up all these little tidbits, but that one, if you really dive into it, Joe, attitude, self-image, and self-discipline, there's there's some things we control and other things we only influence,
Mm.
right? And in that equation, we control our attitude. Every day we get up and we make a decision of what our attitude towards life, towards people, towards our job's going to be, right? And if you start with that attitude, then self discipline comes from, can you get yourself to do the things that you would like to do? And do you
Hmm.
realize that self discipline is a finite quantity for all of us? Like, I hear people say, well, this year I'm going to work out more, I'm going to eat right, I'm going to spend more time with my family and do better in my career. No, you're not. Pick one. What's the most important one? Because you're going to run out of self discipline, in
Right.
those things. But if you have the right attitude and you apply and get yourself to in step by step apply self discipline, you get results, and those results change your self image.
Hmm.
Your self image helps you have a better attitude. Now, people around you start to have expectations of you, and you live up to those expectations. You're controlling your environment. Sometimes people say to me, like my members, oh, well, that's easy for you to, you can do that, Gary. You're Gary Pica. And I'm like, you think I've always been Gary Pica? Like I was born like that? It's like, you put it out there, you tell people, you make them expect greatness from you, and then you'll probably deliver, Joe. Attitude, self image, and self discipline.
I almost see attitude and self-image as two circles like an event, and the overlapping would be the self-discipline. Do you see it that way, or do you see them separated?
No, no, it is just that way. The attitude everyone can control. The self
Right.
discipline you have to build,
Right.
and then that's what it takes to get that overlap into self image. And that self image, dude, we all have a fragile self image. I
Right.
don't care who you are. Okay, all of us have an upper limit problem. It's not something that ever goes away, or you solve it and it's solved for life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so putting things in place that allow you to understand, the things you can control. It's almost like a salesperson. When I work with young salespeople and I tell them, like, hey, you said you were going to make 250 calls last week and you made 235. What's up? Well, I had this, I had that. I'm like, listen, the one thing you can control is your activity. Don't come back. And if you want my help, don't come back ever again without 100% of your activity goals.
Right.
If you're not willing to do the things in your job that you can control, I'm not going to waste my time on the things to help you do the rest. But that's what it is for all of us in whatever our role is. You think that's harsh?
No. No, no, I think you're managing expectations,
Yeah.
right? And you're defining what success looks like. And do you, have you considered yourself? I mean, when you left ADP when you were gonna make, back in 1993 dollars, a half million dollars, you leaving that because of your family and going into a small business. I mean, that's remarkable self-discipline.
Uh, yeah, and let me tell you, there were some times when all my friends were making money and we were
Mm,
having problems making payroll where I started to question it. But somewhere deep down, and I'm lucky, I got a wife who believes in me,
she's
and I have,
wonderful.
you know, and to be able to get me through to say, I always ask myself this question, Joe, and this is really important question. What's the worst thing that can happen?
Mm.
I'm talking to someone close to me right now who's looking at leaving a pretty good job to go to a startup and they're scared. I'm like, what's the worst thing that can happen? It fails and you go get another job like you have now that you don't like that much?
Right. I ask
Yeah.
that question a lot too. What is the worst that could happen? Uh, when you have certain tragedy in your life, I've told you my sister passed away in an auto accident at a certain point, and you kind of have a watermark, and I had to tell my mother that, so you have a certain point. I'm thinking, well, this is going to be the watermark. Everything I'm going to measure my life on from this point on, well, it will never get this bad, hopefully. Sure, I'm
Hopefully,
good.
but it
Yeah,
might, but it
hopefully, but
might.
it might. So if I keep on, if I'm making a business decision, I'm not quite sure it's going to work out. I say, what's the worst that could happen? Well, I think I could live with this worst case scenario. It's an important question to ask and then to deal with that reality. As a youth, did you consider yourself self-disciplined?
No, not really. I was not that good of a student at Penn State. I was on academic probation, really
Hmm.
just trying to have fun. It really wasn't until I started my sales career
Hmm.
and I decided that to get the things I wanted out of life, I was going to have to maybe do some things. It's part of that was doing things I really didn't want to do, and I had to do it, and that other people wouldn't do, and to
Wow.
try to make it look easy, and then to learn to enjoy those things.
Hmm.
The fact that I can get myself to do it. But listen, you're someone who I have a lot of respect for. You're not the same person I met way back in the beginning.
That's true.
I've watched you go through some different things in your life and in your business, and but physically, mentally, emotionally, I've seen those changes. I mean, we don't get to spend a lot of time together, but knowing you for so long, I would almost want to ask you the same question. Like, you're in a good place in your life, and it's not by chance. Like, what are those things for you that have been the key?
Well, as far as discipline, I lost a lot of it. So I was 300, starting a business back in, 1993, I stopped working out. I was eating a lot of pizza, drinking a lot of soda. Next thing I know, I'm 340 pounds. And the doctor says to me, if you don't lose weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. By the way, Julia just graduated in May. And
Congratulations.
yeah, yeah, very, very nice. And so it was like a, come to Jesus moment for me. I said, okay, that's it. I look into my daughter's eye and I didn't tell anybody that I'm going to dramatically change what I do physically and nutritionally. And there's no secret. So when people ask me, how'd you lose 140 pounds? It's like it's some secret. And even what you're talking about, it's just discipline. But I had to kind of bottom out. It didn't seem you had that. It seemed you kind of came to a realization, and then you kind of enforced some self discipline and went forward with it. It was a little bit different
Yeah.
the way you approached it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, I never, I was never faced with something like that's someone telling you like the
Right.
reality of something.
Right.
For me, it was just a fear of failure. When
Mm.
things were bad, it was that fear of failure uh, that that really is what did it for me. And I think I've watched different people get there, and it's funny. It's a different driver. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
like, or sometimes, Joe, I think it's like I have this theory that if you look back, there's a handful of people that you met the right person at the right time,
Mm.
right? And I can name mine. But what I always tell people, Joe, is you don't know who they are most of the time when you meet them. So I'm suggesting you treat every person you meet
Right.
as if they're going to be one of those 5 or 6 people, in your life, because it's either a person or it's an event. Losing a sister, I lost a brother.
Mm.
Like, it's either some event, usually it's a tragedy or negative event, or something personally like that you're faced with. You're faced with a bankruptcy, you're faced with a health issue. There's always seems to be some impetus. And that's why, like, I try to tell my kids, stop worrying about failure.
Mm.
Like, when you fail, you get a new beginning by definition. What you want to worry about is wallowing in the quagmire of
Hmm.
mediocrity. And so, like in your example, Joe, if you weren't 340, if you just would have been, 260, you could have still been,
Yeah.
not healthy, but you wouldn't have been at risk. You might have stayed that way your whole life. It's
Yeah.
almost better that you got to the point where you had to do something. And it's the same thing in business. If people are failing in business, like we were in the beginning where we were struggling, we had
Yes.
to do something. But we know tons of people, Joe, that we've both known for 10 years that are basically the same place in
Yes.
business, wallowing in the quagmire of
Yes.
mediocrity.
Yeah. And the only thing that's stopping them from growing is them, by the way. And it's a hard thing to say,
Yep.
but it's so obvious to us from the outside. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible.
Because they're
When
people
I
we know and we care about, and we know
Oh,
they're good
yeah.
people. But now they're 10 years older and they have less choices in life and they're
Yes, they
running
do.
out of time. And you can see it almost creates an anxiety in them. And it's it's hard to go back. And I know in my company, at True Methods, we had two different retirement plans. Like I was committed to our young people. Like I want to show them how to plan for themselves, and just trying to explain to them like what a dollar invested is at age 25 compared to one at
Mm,
age 55, and because we've seen it now, right, Joe? Like we see all these people, they don't have the same choices they would have had then. But the flip side of it is, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago, but the second best time is now. And I almost try to, temper that with, yeah, you can look back and you should have done things differently, but you didn't. Now you're here. What do we do now, man, going
right.
forward?
Right. Yeah, just like that conversation you had with your, I don't know, a gardener where you said a subcontractor that just came in, and you know, like that entrepreneur we both know. They're working very hard, by the way, but they don't delegate properly. They don't know what they want. They haven't created goals. They haven't created a vision. There's just so many things that they can do over a disciplined weekend and to create a plan. What was Herm Edwards, right? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right?
Right.
When you hear the word discipline, Gary, do you automatically bring it to self-discipline, or do you think of other things? If I ask you, are you a disciplined person? Where does your mind go?
What I would say is, yeah, self discipline. In other words, am I able in all areas of my life to do the things that I need to do, even
Mm,
if I don't want to? And the answer is no.
right.
Like, there's some areas where I have tremendous discipline, and there's other areas, that I struggle with,
Yeah.
like keeping my exercise routine in place,
Right.
like, the guitar, like
Right.
I phase in and out of it.
Me
I'm
too.
not a great golfer
Yeah.
because so much of my self discipline, one, my family always comes first.
Right.
I have 100% self discipline. I can do anything I need to do for them, and then my career has come second. So all those other things, and maybe someone else can do it all, but I feel like I had to make some tough choices, and I'm happy with those choices.
Hmm.
Now I have a little bit more time and choices. I'm trying to get back to those things.
Well said. When I do talk to people about discipline, I love having conversations with great people like yourself that I love and admire. But when I talk about discipline, I get pushback, Gary. Well, that's kind of militant, or it's disciplining your children, and I don't think we need more compassion and love, which is still a great perspective. It's just not how I look at discipline. They kind of have a militant view of it, and I get a decent amount of pushback on that. And I can see that's not your case.
No, not at all. I don't think one has to do with the other. I mean,
Right.
I hope the people closest to me would say that I'm empathetic and loving and caring. I care a lot about a lot of people, man. A pretty big circle of people, right? That I care a lot about, and I'm able to care for them, and I'm able to do for them things that I couldn't do if I didn't have some discipline in my life. Like
Mm,
I think it's harsher not to live your life that way. You
right.
know what I mean? I think that being able to, and it doesn't mean you don't enjoy your life. I know we both enjoy your life. I'm
Yeah.
going to finish this. I have one more call. I'm going out on my boat today,
Me too.
Joe.
Me too. I'm gonna
You
play
know what
some
I mean?
golf. Yeah.
So, and then I'm going to have dinner tonight with my wife at a
Good for you.
restaurant nearby. I mean,
Good for you.
I enjoy my life. Look, if most of us have to work, right? And I say, if you got up and you had to go to work, whether it's at your office or at your bedroom, you got there, you might as well be awesome,
Right.
right? Take the time, whatever that time is. You want to work 30 hours a week, 100 hours a week, I don't care. But whatever it is, I'm saying bring the house every single day. And I don't know. So I'm in disagreement with those people and that. And sometimes I think when people are like that, it's because maybe they're looking for a reason why they don't have discipline or haven't done the things they want to do in their life,
Mm.
and they're looking for some reason why it's okay, and they just can't get it from me. or probably from you, it sounds like.
Yeah, I just like yourself, I'm disciplined very much in some areas, and others I'm not. We were just at an event the last couple of days, and they had some unbelievable food spreads out there, and I went for a second and third, and I shouldn't, but it's but there's other times where I, I don't do that, and there's sometimes that I do. It's just
Yep.
that one example. So I in just Picanomics and just building a business,
Yes.
how much of it, in your perspective, is art versus science? How often are you looking at the actual science, the formulas, and that how that rolls out versus kind of your gut and the art of it? What percentage is it in your opinion?
So here's what I think the relationship is. I'm going to say that it's it's 20 to 30% science.
Hmm. Really, that
Okay.
low?
Yeah, because you can know what to do and have command and understand it and not be able to do it for all
Right.
these other reasons that we're talking about.
Right.
Now, if you don't have that 30%, I don't care what you do, man, you're running uphill. And I
Hmm.
know great, smart business people whose businesses never got to be what they could because they didn't understand the math and science.
Hmm.
So without it, problem. With it, it's only going to turn into your goals and your dreams and your vision if you can do all these things, these intangibles. And you know what, Joe? That's what a lot of people don't like about this.
Right.
And I get it sometimes. They see me up on stage and they feel like, maybe some of it's a little hokey. You know what I mean? And what I tell them is, listen, approaching life with attitude, self-image, and self-discipline, being able to know that I can control my results in my life by what I would do every day, to me is as real as this mouse.
Hmm.
And you can't feel gravity, you can't see gravity, but it impacts everything we do in our life
That's
just
right.
because. And the reason we believe in gravity is because we see so many examples of why there's gravity. Well, in my life, I see so many examples about how you can conduct yourself to get the results that you want. So to me, it's just as real. And some people,
Hmm.
they don't want to believe in the intangible parts. And so much of success is these intangibles. And that's why I love your podcast, by the way.
Hmm. Thank you. That's really well said. And I agree with those numbers, by the way, but I was just thinking with Piconomics and those great formulas you made it up, you would think I was thinking that you would have that more, but your explanation, your rationale is wonderful, absolutely
Well, let
wonderful.
me tell you how I know, because I've shared the science with thousands of people,
Right,
and 30% of them have gotten they've all improved,
right,
but 30% of them have changed their lives,
right.
and 70%, and they all had access to the same information, Joe. It is the 70%. It's the stuff that we're talking about, right? About your self image, about your expectations, and removing self limiting beliefs. And the process by which you do that is all of it, man.
Mm. Hmm. What motivates you, Gary Pica, right now, these days?
Yeah. So that's a great question for me. I think a lot about it because the thing that I did for 10 years, I sold. I'm still
Yes.
involved with it. So I ask myself a lot of these questions. And I think for me, I say to myself, I've developed right now, I have the most perspective, the most talent, the most skills, and the most choices I've ever had in my
Hmm.
life. That's awesome. But I also feel like it's a responsibility. And in this next chapter, I want to make sure, like, I want to help other people that are younger than me
Hmm.
get to the same place. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to use it. I don't want to use my skill of running a business. I want to use my skills on how to run a business. So I don't want to be an operator. I never want to own a business,
Mm.
ever again. And so, the role that I have right now inside Kaseya is great because I don't have to be that. And just being able to, continue to stay with the peer groups and find other opportunities where I can use my talents and skills in different ways to make a difference in the world. Really important to me right now.
Hmm. Yeah, you could see that. You could see that coming through. You spoke at this event. We were just at this last couple of days, and so how do you measure success at this point, Gary?
So, look, part of it is, I mean, can we talk about money for a couple
Sure, of
minutes?
course.
Um, Money's a funny thing, man. Like, we all have a relationship with money,
Yeah.
right? I've met some business owners, and I say to them, "Why do you hate money? Like, did money insult you on the playground in third grade, and you've never made up with money?" You know. But what I realize is that we all have our issues around money, and if you are in business, right, in any type of business, like we are, right, entrepreneurs, one of the things you have to measure yourself by is money. Like, I don't think you can avoid it. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And so, you know, now it just doesn't have the same importance because I'm not going to run out of money in my life.
Right.
So it's almost now more fun because it only becomes like, okay, do I want to do this? How do I value my time and what will I get back? Is it money? Is it a reward? Is it like with a nonprofit? So it doesn't always have to be money, but I want to see that whatever I'm doing is moving the needle, whether it's mentoring people, whether it's a business investment, whether it's working, working in the community, whatever it is, I don't want to do things that don't move the needle. Like, I want to see it.
Hmm.
And if it's a business thing, one of the ways you measure it is money. You know, the funny thing I've learned about money is the and listen, I'm not the richest person in the world, but I have a level of financial, independence. And the best part about having money is being able to think less about money.
Hmm.
It's the best part. A lot, not all of it's great.
Right.
Not is the honest truth. And if someone's struggling, I don't want to seem like offensive or
Right.
insensitive. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
Because I've been there too for a part of my life, and I know how hard that is. But I think a lot of people work really hard for money, and then when they get some of it, they're disappointed
Hmm.
that because it, whether it's getting money, going through a divorce, whatever it is, sometimes we always picture ourselves in a different situation, changing a job. And when we think it's about ourselves, well, if everything was the same, but I just had money, I would be happy. Or if I was with a different person, I would be happy. Or if I had a different job, I would be
Hmm.
happy. And
Hmm.
there's one big miscalculation in there, Joe. When we get wherever that situation is that we see, and we wake up in the morning, it's still us. And we have the same self image and the same thoughts going through our head. Until that changes, none of the other stuff matters.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said. It's interesting how when we talk to people are afraid to talk about money, because like you said, you don't want to offend people who are struggling, or if you have a certain level of financial independence and freedom, you don't want to you know seem glib, but it is important because that's how we live our life. That's how we're able to have certain freedoms and have certain ways of recreating and ways of living and ways of enjoying ourselves. It's a very difficult issue, and I like your approach to it. And I, I never quite heard the expression, "Why do you have such a bad relationship with money?" That's really well said, and I know people exactly like that.
Yeah. And, for me, Joe, I grew up in a blue collar environment, and
Me
I,
too.
I never felt like we were poor,
Right.
but I didn't do anything to cost money. I
Mm,
never golfed. I never skied. If it cost money, we just didn't do it.
right.
My dad worked in a factory, went to World War II, and he worked in a factory his whole life. So I can tell you that it's been a difficult as I start to accumulate, more and more net worth, and start to have a few nice things. Like, at times, I was almost embarrassed by them. Do you
Mm,
know what I mean? like I would felt like maybe when someone came over and I had a when I had a nice house or car, like I don't want to make someone feel bad about their
Right.
situation, and I had to work and get some therapy, you know what I mean, to
Mm,
try to think through that and to be able to say, hey, you've made some money, as long as you're being responsible and doing the right thing in your community, it's okay to start to enjoy it.
right.
And I was taught that money was only something you saved.
Hmm.
And so there's that balance, and that served me well. But there's that balance between that and being able to to enjoy your life. It's not an easy balance to have. And so, like, I'm telling you what I've learned, but have had and still have some struggles with my relationship with money.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, because I've known both ends. I've known people that got a lot of money and turned into, jerks, right? They just were immature about it and overspent and flaunted. And then I know others that, did really well and struggled and, really took a lot of thought in what they did with it. And I always hear the expression, would you rather have $1 billion and everybody knows about it, or 10 million, nobody knows about it? I would want the latter. I don't want anybody to know it.
You and me both,
Yeah,
Joe.
yeah.
It's it's a hard, like, there's some hard lessons, right, to learn in it. And but the one thing, and people like this too, when I meet people who are financially successful, and after this I'll give you my definition for success,
Okay.
but who are financially successful, and they almost like they want everyone to know it, but it's almost like they feel like they operate under different rules,
Right.
or that they're better than someone else. It's like, listen, my brother who passed away was one of the best child psychologists ever.
Mm,
He did so much to impact people's lives. It just so happens that what I do makes money.
right.
Like, it's nothing more or less than that, Joe.
Right.
And it's not how you measure success. So I stole my definition of success again from Tom Hopkins, The Official Guide to Success. And it goes like this: success is the journey, the continuous journey towards the achievement of predetermined worthwhile goals.
Wow.
Success is the like that like if you take that apart, all of
Mm,
those world, continuous journey. So it's not a destination,
right.
it's a journey. And if you don't continue it, you will cease to be successful, right? The continuous journey towards the achievement of predetermined worthwhile, that means not only for you but for
Mm,
other people
mm.
and the world, right? Goals. I love that.
No, wonderful sentiment. Wonderful sentiment. And a great way to kind of conclude our conversation. Gary Pica, it's such a pleasure. I've known you for so long. I've never not seen you with a smile, not seen you determined to help others. We both, when we see each other, I think the first thing we say is, "How's the family?" And then the second thing we say is, "Have you been playing guitar?" I mean, we don't even
Yeah,
talk about business until the third or fourth item, because we both realize, those are the more important things, and
absolutely,
around
Joe.
this, and is your guitar tuned? Are your fingers calloused? That means that's good news. That means you're playing a little bit more and you're recreating. Such a great pleasure to see you again. I saw you last couple of days and to talk with you. Thanks so much for being on. How can we get in touch with you if anybody wants to get in touch with Gary Pica?
Yeah, so you can hit me up on LinkedIn.
Yep.
I'm always looking to connect with people on LinkedIn, and I'll give you my personal email address. So it's gpica at picafamily.com. So if people want to send me a personal email, I'm happy. I'm always here.
And Pica is Pica, but we'll have it in the show notes. Gary, thank you so much again, my friend. I look forward to seeing you again out on the road, and have a great day and enjoy that boat ride today.
Joe, thanks so much for having me. It's great to see you. Let's go, people.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. It's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Disciplined Conversations.